Hello, amazing listeners. Welcome back to the Artificial Fluency Podcast. I'm Emma, and in today's episode, we'll practice improving your English listening and writing skills through real-life stories. Listening to these stories will help you understand how English is used in everyday situations, making your learning more practical and engaging. Whether you're at home, in class, or on the go, listening to these examples will give you a better grasp of the language. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Every day we upload new videos to help you improve your English skills step by step. Now, let's get into today's story. I want to share a story about my friend Sarah, who once had to make a big decision in her life. She was living in a small town and working at a local bookstore. One day, she received an offer to move to the city and work for a larger company. It was a dream job, but she was unsure about leaving her comfort zone. Sarah knew that if she stayed, she would continue her quiet, simple life. But if she moved to the city, things would be different. She would meet new people, have more opportunities, and probably be much busier. At first, Sarah felt nervous. But after thinking it over, she realized that staying in her comfort zone wouldn't help her grow. She decided to take the job in the city. The first few months were challenging. New place, new people, new routine. But after a while, Sarah started to feel at home. She made new friends, learned new things, and most importantly, she grew as a person. This story teaches us that sometimes we have to take risks to move forward in life. It's not always easy, but the experience helps us grow and become more confident. Let's talk about another story, this time about a man named John. John is an engineer, and he had worked at the same company for almost 10 years. He was really good at his job, but recently, he felt like he wasn't learning anything new. One day, his manager asked him to lead a new project. John was excited but also nervous because he had never been in charge of a project before. He wasn't sure if he could do it, but his manager believed in him. John took the challenge seriously. He spent long hours reading, researching, and meeting with the team. Slowly, he began to feel more confident. As the project progressed, he noticed that he was developing new skills that he didn't know he had. By the time the project was completed, it was a huge success, and John had learned so much. The lesson from John's story is that taking on new responsibilities can push us out of our comfort zones, but it's through these challenges that we learn and grow. It's important to embrace opportunities, even when they seem a little scary. Next, let's talk about another story I personally experienced. A few years ago, I went on a hiking trip with some friends. We were in a forest, surrounded by nature. Everything was beautiful, but as the day went on, the weather turned cloudy and the temperature dropped. We were far from the nearest town, and it was getting darker. We were nervous, but we kept moving forward. We trusted our guide and kept following the path. After a while, the weather cleared up, and we made it to the top of a hill just as the sun was setting. It was one of the most beautiful sights I had ever seen. Looking back, I realized that the journey wasn't just about reaching the top, it was about facing the challenges along the way. The journey taught me to be patient and trust the process. This story shows that in life, we often face difficulties, but it's the challenges that make the reward at the end even more worthwhile. Let me share another story with you. This one is about David, a small business owner. David runs a bakery in his town. He wakes up early every morning to bake fresh bread, cakes, and pastries. His bakery is well known in the neighborhood, and people love his food. But a few months ago, David faced a big problem. A new bakery opened just down the street, and many of his customers started going there. At first, David felt discouraged. He had worked so hard for years and now he was losing customers. But instead of giving up, he decided to make some changes. He started asking his regular customers what they liked most about his bakery. Some said they loved the fresh bread, while others said they enjoyed the friendly service. This gave David an idea. He decided to focus on what made his bakery special. He started making new types of bread with different flavors. He also gave small free samples to new customers. Slowly, people started coming back. They realized that David's bakery had something unique: delicious homemade food and a warm, friendly atmosphere. This story teaches us an important lesson. When we face problems, we should not give up. Instead, we should find ways to improve and make the best of the situation. Now, let me tell you about Emily, a student preparing for an important exam. Emily was always a hardworking student, but this exam was different. It was more difficult than anything she had done before, and she felt overwhelmed. She didn't know where to start, and the more she thought about it, the more stressed she became. One day, Emily's teacher gave her some advice. He told her to break her study time into small parts. Instead of trying to study everything at once, she should focus on one topic at a time. Emily followed this advice. She made a study schedule and took short breaks between study sessions. She also started writing down key points to help her remember important information. As the exam day came closer, Emily felt more prepared. She wasn't as nervous as before because she had a clear plan. When she finally took the exam, she did well. Emily's story shows us that when we have a big task, it's better to take it step by step. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, we can make a plan and work through it slowly. This method helps not only with studying but also with many other challenges in life. Now, let's talk about another real-life situation. A man named Robert wanted to improve his health. He had been feeling tired all the time, and he knew he needed to make some changes. At first, he thought he had to do everything at once: exercise every day, eat only healthy food, and completely change his lifestyle. But after a few days, he felt exhausted and gave up. Then, Robert decided to take a different approach. Instead of changing everything at once, he started with small steps. First, he began going for short walks in the evening. Then, he added more vegetables to his meals. Slowly, he built better habits. Over time, he had more energy and felt much better. His story teaches us an important lesson. When we want to improve something, we don't have to do everything at once. Small, consistent changes are often more effective than big, sudden changes. Let me share another personal experience. A few years ago, I traveled to a different country for the first time. It was exciting, but also a little scary because I didn't know the language very well. At first, I felt nervous about talking to people. I worried about making mistakes or not understanding what they said. But then I realized that most people were friendly and patient. When I didn't know a word, I used gestures or tried to explain in a simple way. With time, my confidence grew, and I started speaking more naturally. By the end of the trip, I felt much more comfortable using the language. Now let me share a much longer and more detailed story, one that will help you think about how small changes can make a big impact in your life. This is the story of my friend James, who was a manager at a local restaurant. James loved his job. He enjoyed helping his team and serving the customers. But over time, he noticed that things weren't going as well as before. The restaurant used to be busy every day, but now it seemed that fewer people were coming in. The staff seemed tired, and the customers didn't always leave satisfied. At first, James wasn't sure what was causing the problem. The food was still great, and the staff was friendly. He decided to spend a few days observing everything, watching how customers were treated, seeing how the kitchen worked, and listening to what the staff had to say. One day while talking To the waiters, James discovered that they felt overwhelmed because they didn't have enough time to check on every customer. The kitchen staff, too, was struggling to keep up with the orders. As James thought about it, he realized that the problem wasn't the food or the service. It was the way the restaurant was organized. There wasn't enough communication between the kitchen and the waiters, and there was no clear plan to manage the rush hours. James knew he had to make some changes. The first thing he did was improve the communication between the kitchen and the waiters. They set up a system where the waiters could update the kitchen quickly when a new order came in. This way, the kitchen could prepare food faster, and the waiters would know exactly when the food was ready. Next, James worked with his team to organize the shifts better. He made sure there were enough people working during busy times, and he also trained the staff on how to manage stress during peak hours. The result? The restaurant started to get busier again. Customers were happy because the food came out faster and the waiters had more time to check on them. The staff felt more organized and less stressed. James also noticed that the team worked better together because they had clearer communication. This story is a great example of how small changes in how we organize our time and communicate with others can have a big impact on our success. It's not always about working harder, it's about working smarter. James didn't need to make big, expensive changes. He just needed to listen to his team and think about how they could work together more efficiently. Let me tell you another story, this time about a woman named Alice, who wanted to become a better writer. Alice had always enjoyed writing, but she struggled with expressing her thoughts clearly on paper. She would start writing, but often got stuck in the middle of her sentences. Her ideas were there, but she found it hard to put them into words. At first, Alice was frustrated because no matter how much she practiced, she couldn't seem to improve. She read a lot of books, took online courses, and even joined writing groups. But something still wasn't working. One day, Alice decided to take a different approach. Instead of focusing only on writing, she started paying more attention to how people talk to each other in everyday conversations. Alice realized that when people talked, they didn't always use perfect grammar or follow strict writing rules. They used simple words, short sentences, and sometimes even incomplete thoughts, but they still communicated effectively. Inspired by this, Alice started writing the way people speak. She didn't worry too much about grammar at first. Instead, she focused on writing as if she were telling a story to a friend. Over time, Alice noticed a big difference. Her writing became more natural and easier to read. She wasn't just trying to follow writing rules anymore, she was telling a story in a way that felt real and personal. Alice's advice to other writers is simple. Don't be afraid to write like you talk. The more you practice this, the more comfortable and confident you'll become in your writing. This story is important because it teaches us that sometimes we need to change our approach to learning. If one method doesn't work, it might be helpful to try something new. Alice's story also shows us that making small changes in how we think about writing can lead to big improvements. Now, let's move to another example about a young man named Mark, who was trying to get a job after graduating from university. Mark had a degree in business management and he was excited to start his career. However, after applying to many jobs and going to several interviews, Mark wasn't having any luck. He started to feel discouraged and wondered if there was something wrong with his resume or his approach. One day, Mark decided to ask a mentor for advice. His mentor was a successful business owner, and Mark hoped he could help him. After looking at Mark's resume and hearing about his interview experiences, the mentor pointed out something that Mark hadn't noticed before. Mark wasn't showing enough of his personality in his applications. The mentor explained that many employers are not only looking for someone with the right qualifications, they also want someone who will fit in with their company culture. Mark realized that he had been so focused on showing his skills and achievements that he hadn't taken the time to show his passion for the job or his excitement about working with the team. Taking this advice, Mark updated his resume. He added a section where he explained why he was passionate about working in the business field and what he hoped to achieve in his career. He also practiced answering interview questions in a way that showed more of his personality. Soon after, Mark received a job offer from a company he had interviewed with earlier. They told him that they were impressed by how he demonstrated his enthusiasm and commitment. Mark's story teaches us an important lesson. It's not enough just to show your skills. Employers want to see your personality and how you will fit into their team. This story also shows how a little bit of advice can help us see things from a different perspective. Now, I'll share one more story about how taking small steps toward your goals can create big changes. This story is about my brother, Tom. Tom always wanted to run a marathon. For years, he talked about it but never actually started training. He would make excuses like, "I don't have enough time" or "I'm not fit enough yet." One day, Tom decided to stop making excuses. He started with small steps. Instead of aiming to run the whole marathon right away, he set a goal to run for 10 minutes without stopping. At first it was difficult, but he pushed through and eventually made it. The next week he increased his time to 20 minutes. Slowly but surely, Tom built up his stamina and confidence. Months later, Tom ran his first marathon. It wasn't easy, and there were times when he felt like giving up. But he had learned that breaking big goals into smaller, manageable steps made them much easier to achieve. Tom's success shows that even the biggest goals are possible if we take them one step at a time. Let's dive even deeper into real-life experiences that can help you improve your listening and writing skills, while also showing how people learn from their challenges. I believe that when we look at different situations, we gain new insights. And that's exactly what I'm going to share with you in this next set of stories. These examples are going to show you how persistence, planning, and changing small things can lead to big results. Let's start with a story about my friend Laura. Laura is a teacher, and she has been teaching at a local school for about 5 years. At first, she loved her job. She enjoyed interacting with students, creating lesson plans, and seeing her students succeed. But over time, she started to feel burned out. The workload kept increasing, and the students were becoming more distracted. Laura didn't feel the same excitement she once had. She wasn't sure what was wrong, but she felt tired and frustrated. One day, after a particularly stressful week, Laura spoke with a fellow teacher who had been teaching for much longer. This teacher shared some advice that changed everything for Laura. Sometimes you need to step back and take care of yourself before you can take care of your students. The more Laura thought about it, the more she realized that she had been putting everyone else's needs before her own. She didn't take enough time for herself, and that's why she felt exhausted. Laura decided to make some changes. First, she began to prioritize her well-being. She started taking short breaks throughout the day to clear her mind. She also began practicing mindfulness, focusing on breathing exercises and spending time outdoors. As a result, she felt more energized and positive. Laura also started setting clearer boundaries, making sure she didn't take work home every day. By the end of the semester, she noticed that her teaching had improved. Her students were more engaged, and she felt more fulfilled in her work. This story shows us that in order to give our best, we need to take care of ourselves first. It's easy to forget this, but self-care is an essential part of success, both personally and professionally. Laura's experience also teaches us that sometimes we have to change our approach to our daily routines to feel more energized and focused. Now let me tell you about another inspiring story. This one is about a man named Sam. Sam always wanted to write a book. He had the idea for years but never found the time or motivation to start. He'd tell himself, "I'm too busy," or "I don't have enough experience." But every time he watched an interview with a successful author, he would feel inspired. He knew he had a story to tell, but something always stopped him from actually writing it. One day, after hearing a motivational speaker talk about the importance of consistency, Sam decided to change his approach. Instead of setting a huge goal like write a book, he broke the process down into small, achievable steps. Sam started by writing just 500 words a day. It wasn't much, but it was something he could manage. Some days he would write more, and other days, less. But no matter what, he made sure to write at least 500 words. Over time, Sam built a routine. He would wake up early and spend the first hour of his day writing. As weeks went by, his manuscript started to take shape. It wasn't perfect, but it was real progress. After 6 months, Sam finished the first draft of his book. He was thrilled. It wasn't easy, but the small daily habit of writing made a huge difference. Sam's story teaches us that big goals don't need to be overwhelming. Breaking them down into smaller steps can help us stay focused and motivated. It also shows that consistency is key to achieving success, even if it's just a little bit at a time. Let me share another experience, this time from a woman named Karen, who wanted to improve her public speaking skills. Karen had always been a little nervous about speaking in front of people. She avoided presentations at work and preferred to communicate through emails or messages. But one day, her boss asked her to present a new project to a group of colleagues. Karen was terrified. She didn't know how to prepare, and she feared that she would mess up. Instead of saying no, Karen decided to face her fear. She knew that public speaking was a skill she could improve, and avoiding it would only make it harder. So, Karen took a deep breath and started practicing. She recorded herself speaking, watched the recordings, and noted areas where she could improve. She also asked a friend to watch her practice presentations and give feedback. The more Karen practiced, the more confident she became. On the day of the presentation, she still felt nervous, but she had prepared well. She spoke clearly, made eye contact with her audience, and even smiled. After the presentation, her colleagues praised her for the clear and confident delivery. Karen's experience teaches us that we don't have to be perfect right away. We can improve any skill with enough practice and patience. If we face our fears instead of avoiding them, we grow stronger and more capable. Now let's hear a story about a man named Jack, who wanted to get fit and healthy. Jack had always struggled with his weight. He would try different diets and exercise routines, but nothing seemed to work in the long term. He often felt like giving up, especially when he didn't see results right away. One day, Jack realized something important. He had been focusing too much on the end goal, losing a certain amount of weight or fitting into a smaller size. He realized that these big goals were overwhelming and made him feel like he wasn't progressing. Instead of focusing on the number on the scale, Jack decided to change his mindset. He would focus on building healthy habits instead. He started by drinking more water, getting more sleep, and eating healthier foods. Jack also started going for short walks every day. At first, he could only walk for 15 minutes, but gradually he built up his stamina. Over the next few months, Jack lost weight, but more importantly, he felt healthier and more energized. The changes he made weren't drastic, but they were consistent. Jack's story teaches us that health is not just about reaching a certain number on the scale. It's about making sustainable changes that we can keep for the long term. Small, healthy habits can lead to big improvements over time. Let me share another story about a woman named Jessica who had been struggling with procrastination. Jessica was a university student, And like many students, she often left assignments until the last minute. This habit caused her a lot of stress, especially when deadlines were approaching. She knew that she needed to change her behavior, but every time she promised herself to start earlier, she would find something else to do, like checking social media or watching videos. One day, Jessica's professor gave her some advice that changed everything. He told her to break down her assignments into smaller tasks. Instead of thinking, "I have to write a 10-page essay," Jessica could focus on writing just one paragraph at a time. This made the task seem much less overwhelming. Jessica also started using a timer to stay focused. She would set a timer for 25 minutes to work, then take a 5-minute break. This technique, called the Pomodoro technique, helped her stay focused and productive. Over time, Jessica became much better at managing her time. She no longer procrastinated, and her grades improved. Jessica's story shows us that procrastination is a common problem, but we can overcome it by breaking tasks down into smaller pieces. Time management tools, like the Pomodoro technique, can also be very effective in helping us stay focused. Let's continue with more stories that can help you improve your listening and writing skills. These stories are full of lessons, and as you listen to them, you'll notice how different life situations can teach us valuable skills. The more you listen to stories like these, the easier it will become to apply the lessons to your own life. Let's dive deeper into the experiences of people facing everyday challenges and how they learned from them. One story I want to share is about a man named David. David worked as a software engineer in a big company. He was always focused on his work, and he loved solving complex problems. However, he had one issue. He often felt disconnected from his coworkers. David was shy and didn't feel comfortable starting conversations or joining team activities. He thought that focusing on his work would be enough, but he started to realize that this isolation was affecting his job performance and his happiness. One day, during a team meeting, his boss made a comment that stuck with him. She said, "Communication is just as important as technical skills." David thought about it for a long time. He realized that to grow in his career, he needed to work on his communication skills, but he didn't know where to start. David decided to take small steps. The next day, he smiled at his coworkers and said hello. At first, it felt awkward, but soon it became a habit. He also started asking more questions in meetings, not just about work-related topics, but also about his coworkers' weekends or hobbies. Over time, David became more confident in conversations. He was no longer just a quiet engineer in the back of the room. His relationships with his coworkers improved, and so did his teamwork and productivity. David's story shows us that communication is a skill that can be developed with practice. It also teaches us that sometimes the small changes we make can have a big impact on our lives. Next, let me tell you about a woman named Emily, who faced a challenge with time management. Emily was a student, and she often found herself juggling multiple tasks: homework, studying for exams, and spending time with friends. She had big dreams of graduating with honors, but there was one problem: she wasn't very organized. She would often forget deadlines or leave things until the last minute. This made her feel stressed and overwhelmed, and it started affecting her grades. Emily knew she needed to make a change. She decided to invest in a planner and started writing down her tasks for the week. Every Sunday, she would sit down and plan her schedule for the upcoming week. She would list out her assignments, exams, and any social plans. Emily also began setting priorities. She would focus on the most important tasks first, and the smaller tasks could wait. The first few weeks were challenging, but Emily stuck to her new routine. She started feeling more organized, and her stress levels decreased. She began to notice that her grades were improving too. Emily's story teaches us that time management doesn't require major changes. It's about finding the right tools and sticking to a routine. Small steps, like making a weekly plan, can help us be more productive and less stressed. Another story that comes to mind is about a man named Mike, who was passionate about photography. Mike had been taking photos as a hobby for years, but he never thought he could turn it into a career. He had a full-time job in marketing, and he would often take pictures in his free time. But deep down, he felt unfulfilled. Mike knew that photography was something he truly loved, but he lacked the courage to take the next step. One day, Mike went to a photography exhibition. He met a professional photographer there who shared her journey. She explained how she had started by taking pictures for fun, but eventually she began selling her photos online and offering her services to clients. She told Mike, "If you love something, don't wait for the perfect moment. Start now and figure it out as you go." Mike thought about her words for days. Finally, he decided to take a leap of faith. He began by setting up an Instagram account dedicated to his photography. He posted his best photos and began using hashtags to reach a wider audience. It wasn't easy at first. Mike had a few awkward moments, like when he received negative comments or didn't get as many likes as he hoped. But he didn't give up. Over time, Mike started gaining followers, and he began receiving inquiries from people who wanted to hire him for events or photo shoots. Eventually, he was able to quit his marketing job and become a full-time photographer. Mike's story shows us that it's never too late to follow your passions. Even if you're unsure at first, taking small actions towards your goals can lead to big changes. It also teaches us that success doesn't always happen overnight. Let's move on to another inspiring story. This one is about Sarah, a mother of two who is trying to balance her family life and her career. Sarah had always been a hardworking person. She worked as a nurse, and her job required long shifts. While she loved helping others, she often found herself exhausted and drained. Her family felt the strain too, as she didn't have enough time to spend with her children or her husband. One day, Sarah's friend invited her to a weekend retreat focused on personal development. At first, Sarah wasn't sure if she could take the time off, but she realized it might be exactly what she needed. She decided to go, and it turned out to be a life-changing decision. The retreat taught Sarah about the importance of balance. She learned how to set boundaries at work, take breaks during her shifts, and spend more quality time with her family. She also learned to ask for help when she needed it, whether it was from her husband, her parents, or friends. When Sarah returned home, she felt rejuvenated. She started putting some of the retreat's lessons into practice. She set aside weekends for family time, and during the week she made sure to have moments of rest, even if it was just reading a book for 15 minutes. She also learned to say no to extra shifts when she was feeling overwhelmed. Sarah's story teaches us that balance is key to leading a fulfilling life. It shows us that, even when life feels busy, it's important to take time for ourselves and prioritize what truly matters. Let me share another story, this time about a woman named Olivia who wanted to improve her public speaking skills. Olivia had always been nervous about speaking in front of a crowd. She was a talented writer and loved expressing herself through words, but when it came to speaking, she would freeze. She knew that public speaking was an important skill, especially in her career as a marketing manager, but she avoided it whenever she could. One day, Olivia was asked to give a presentation at a conference. At first, she felt terrified, but instead of saying no, Olivia decided to face her fear. She took a public speaking course to learn techniques for speaking confidently. She also practiced in front of a mirror and recorded herself so she could improve her delivery. On the day of the presentation, Olivia still felt nervous, but she was well prepared. She followed the techniques she had learned and focused on speaking slowly and clearly. She made eye contact with the audience, and soon she felt more at ease. By the end of her talk, Olivia had gained the confidence she needed. Her colleagues praised her for the excellent presentation, and it felt like a huge achievement for Olivia. Olivia's story teaches us that it's okay to be nervous about something new, but with practice, we can improve. Public speaking is a skill that anyone can develop with time and effort. Let's dive deeper into the stories that can inspire you to keep going and improving in your English learning journey. As you listen to these real-life stories, think about how they relate to your own experiences and what lessons you can take away from them. Whether it's learning new skills, overcoming challenges, or making small changes to improve your life, each story has something to teach. This next story is about a man named James. James worked as a teacher and he loved his job. He was passionate about helping his students learn and grow. However, he started noticing something. His students were struggling with motivation. They weren't as excited about learning as they used to be. James realized that it wasn't just the students who needed to change. It was his teaching approach. James decided to try something new. He began asking his students more questions during lessons, encouraging them to share their thoughts and ideas. He also started using interactive activities that involved group work and discussions. At first, some students were hesitant, but slowly they began to engage more in class. They were excited to share their opinions, ask questions, and work together. James also realized that motivation doesn't come from external rewards. It comes from the internal feeling of accomplishment. So, he made sure to give his students small, achievable goals throughout the year. Every time a student reached a goal, he would celebrate their progress no matter how small it was. As time went on, James noticed a huge improvement. His students were more motivated and eager to learn. They were asking more questions and participating in class activities. James had transformed his teaching style by focusing on engaging his students and helping them feel successful. His story teaches us that sometimes a small change in how we approach something can make a big difference. Whether it's in teaching, learning, or any other part of life, making things more interactive and focused on progress can lead to... Now, let's talk about a story from Sarah, a woman who worked in a busy office environment. Sarah had always dreamed of becoming a manager one day, but she wasn't sure how to get there. She had the skills, but she felt like she was being overlooked. Every time there was a new leadership opportunity, someone else seemed to get it. Sarah was frustrated because she worked hard and was passionate about her job, but she didn't know how to stand out. One day, Sarah had a conversation with her colleague, Alan. Alan had been promoted recently, and Sarah was curious about how he got there. Alan shared that the key to getting ahead was taking on more responsibility and showing initiative. He told Sarah, "Managers don't wait for opportunities to come to them. They create opportunities by stepping up." Inspired by this advice, Sarah decided to take action. She began volunteering for extra projects and asked her boss if she could lead a small team on a new task. At first, her boss was surprised, but Sarah's proactive attitude impressed him. She quickly demonstrated her leadership skills and proved she could handle more responsibility. A few months later, Sarah was promoted to a management position. Looking back, she realized that her success wasn't about waiting for someone to recognize her potential. It was about showing what she could do. Sarah's story teaches us that if you want to achieve something, you need to take the first step. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Instead, make your own opportunities by being proactive and showing what you're capable of. Let me tell you about another story, this time about a man named Ben, who had a passion for cooking. Ben had always enjoyed preparing meals for his family and friends, but he never thought of it as anything more than a hobby. He worked in an office job, and cooking was just something he did on the weekends. However, one evening, a friend of Ben's asked if he could cater a small event for a group of people. At first, Ben was nervous. He didn't have any professional cooking experience, but his friend encouraged him to give it a try. Ben spent the next week preparing for the event. He carefully planned the menu, researched recipes, and practiced cooking in large quantities. On the day of the event, Ben felt anxious. What if the food wasn't good enough? What if the guests didn't like it? But when the guests arrived, they were impressed. They loved the food, and they even asked if Ben could cater for other events in the future. Ben was amazed by how well everything went, and the positive feedback he received made him realize that maybe he could turn his passion into something more. A few months later, Ben decided to start his own catering business. He took cooking classes, built a website, and began promoting his services. It wasn't easy, and there were challenges along the way, but Ben was determined. His business gradually grew, and today, he runs a successful catering company. Ben's story teaches us that sometimes we don't realize our potential until we step outside of our comfort zones. By taking risks and embracing new opportunities, we can discover hidden talents and create something amazing. Let's talk about a woman named Rachel, who had a difficult time with change. Rachel had been working at the same company for over 10 years. She was comfortable in her role and enjoyed her routine. However, the company underwent a major restructuring, and Rachel's department was downsized. She was faced with a difficult decision: find a new job or adapt to the changes in her current role. At first, Rachel resisted the idea of change. She felt uncertain and scared about what the future would hold, but after some time, she realized that staying stuck in the past wouldn't help her grow. Rachel decided to embrace the change. She took on new responsibilities, learned new skills, and started working with different teams within the company. As the months passed, Rachel found that she actually enjoyed the new challenges. She became more flexible and developed a growth mindset. She learned that change could be an opportunity for growth rather than something to fear. Rachel's story shows us that change can be hard, but it can also lead to personal and professional growth. When faced with uncertainty, instead of resisting, we can choose to adapt. Now, let's hear about a young man named Alex, who was always the life of the party. Alex was known for his outgoing personality, and he loved being around people. However, there was one problem. Alex wasn't great at managing his time. He often procrastinated on important tasks because he was too busy socializing. Whether it was studying for exams or finishing work projects, Alex always left things until the last minute. One day, Alex had a conversation with his friend Jessica, who was always very organized. Jessica shared her time management tips with him, including how she made schedules and set aside specific times for work and relaxation. Alex decided to try her methods. He started by making a list of tasks he needed to complete and broke them down into smaller steps. He also made sure to set aside time for both work and fun. It wasn't easy at first, but over time, Alex began to feel more in control of his life. He started completing his tasks ahead of time and still had plenty of time to socialize. Alex's story teaches us that finding balance in life is important. By managing our time effectively, we can accomplish our goals without feeling overwhelmed. Let's finish with a story about a woman named Grace, who was passionate about fitness. Grace had always been active, but a few years ago, she had an injury that caused her to stop exercising. At first, she felt discouraged. She missed working out, but she didn't think she would ever be able to get back to her old fitness routine. After several months, Grace decided to give it another try. She started with small, simple exercises that wouldn't put too much strain on her injury. Slowly but surely, she began to feel stronger. Over time, she increased the intensity of her workouts. Grace learned that progress wasn't about rushing, it was about being patient with herself and taking small steps every day. Today, Grace is in the best shape of her life. She runs marathons and feels stronger than ever before. Grace's story teaches us that setbacks don't have to define us. With perseverance and patience, we can overcome challenges and achieve our goals. Let's dive even deeper into more stories, learning from real-life experiences and gaining valuable lessons. The beauty of these stories lies in the fact that we can all relate to them. Whether we've experienced something similar or have learned from challenges, there's always something to take away. Let's explore more stories that help us understand growth, resilience, and the power of taking action. This is a story about a young man named Liam. Liam had always dreamed of becoming a writer, but he never felt confident in his abilities. He would write short stories and poetry, but kept them hidden away in a drawer. He didn't think his work was good enough to be shared with others. However, one day, his friend Emma convinced him to share one of his stories at a local open mic night. At first, Liam hesitated. He was terrified of standing in front of an audience, but Emma reassured him that this could be his chance to finally show what he could do. When the night came, Liam was nervous, but he went on stage and read his story. The audience was quiet at first, but as he continued, he noticed people were engaged. They were listening to every word, and some even smiled as they recognized emotions in the story that they themselves had felt. By the time Liam finished reading, there was a round of applause. He couldn't believe it. His story had connected with people. That night, Liam realized that it wasn't about being perfect. It was about being authentic and sharing something from the heart. After the open mic night, Liam began writing more often. He shared his stories on a blog and started receiving positive feedback from readers. Eventually, he even published a book. His story teaches us that the first step toward achieving our dreams is often the hardest, but it's also the most rewarding. Sometimes, we have to take a risk, face our fears, and put ourselves out there. Only then can we see the impact we can have on others. Let's talk about a woman named Sophie. Sophie had always been an active person who loved traveling and exploring new places. However, after she got married and had children, she found herself feeling stuck. Between her responsibilities at home and work, Sophie felt like she had no time for herself. She was always busy taking care of others, but she had forgotten about her own needs, and one day, Sophie decided to make a change. She began setting aside time each week to do something for herself. It wasn't easy at first, but Sophie made a commitment to focus on her own well-being. She started taking long walks in the park, going for runs in the morning, and even began taking weekend trips to new cities. Slowly, Sophie started to feel more energized and fulfilled. As she reconnected with her passions, Sophie realized that it wasn't selfish to take time for herself. It was necessary. She was a better wife, mother, and friend when she took care of her own needs. Sophie's story teaches us the importance of self-care. In our busy lives, it's easy to forget about ourselves, but by prioritizing our own health and happiness, we can be better for the people around us. Now, let's hear about Daniel, a man who worked in the tech industry. Daniel had been working at the same company for several years, and while he enjoyed the work, he began to feel like his career had plateaued. He had reached a point where he wasn't learning anything new, and he felt like his growth was slowing down. Daniel began to feel frustrated, wondering if he should stay in his current job or try something new. One day, Daniel attended a career development workshop where a speaker talked about the importance of continuous learning. The speaker shared stories of people who had reinvented their careers by learning new skills and stepping outside their comfort zones. Inspired by what he heard, Daniel decided to take action. He enrolled in an online course to learn more about artificial intelligence, an area he had always been interested in but never explored. At first, Daniel felt overwhelmed. The concepts were challenging, and he didn't know if he was capable of mastering them. But with time and effort, he started to understand the material. He spent hours studying, practicing, and applying what he learned. A few months later, Daniel was able to integrate his new skills into his work, and he became an expert in the field of artificial intelligence. He also gained a promotion at his company, which recognized his dedication and new expertise. Daniel's story shows us that it's never too late to learn something new. Sometimes when we feel stuck, the key to moving forward is to embrace new challenges and develop new skills. Continuous learning is a powerful tool for personal and professional growth, and it can open doors we never imagined. Let me tell you about Olivia, a young woman who loved sports. She had always been a competitive person, especially when it came to running. Olivia had participated in several races and had always been among the top finishers. However, during one race, she experienced something that would change her perspective forever. She was running in a marathon, and at the halfway point, she felt an intense pain in her leg. It was a sharp, stabbing pain that forced her to slow down. Despite the pain, Olivia kept running. She wanted to finish the race, but with each step, the pain grew worse. Finally, after struggling for miles, Olivia had to stop. She had to sit on the side of the road and wait for medical assistance. She was devastated. All her training and hard work had led to this moment of failure. But as she sat there watching other runners continue, Olivia realized something important. It wasn't about winning the race. It was about the journey. Olivia took the time to recover and learn from her experience. She realized that her value wasn't determined by whether she finished first or last. It was about pushing herself and giving her best effort. She decided to focus on enjoying the process of training and improving, rather than stressing about the outcome. The next year, Olivia ran the same marathon again. This time, she finished strong, but more importantly, she enjoyed every moment of the race. Olivia's story teaches us that failure isn't the end. It's a chance to learn and grow. Success isn't always about being the best. It's about embracing the journey and learning from every experience, both good and bad. Let's continue to explore more stories of growth, resilience, and the powerful lessons that come with facing challenges. These stories are not just for entertainment. They serve as reminders that the path to success and personal development is often filled with hurdles. But every challenge is an opportunity to learn something valuable, whether it's about ourselves or the world around us. These stories show us the importance of perseverance, hard work, and the willingness to take risks. Let's start with the story of Sarah, a young woman who grew up in a small town. Sarah always dreamed of moving to the city and working in fashion, but she had no connections and no idea where to start. She graduated from high school and went to a local college where she studied design. While she was good at it, Sarah felt like she didn't have the resources or opportunities to truly break into the fashion industry. Her classmates seemed to have more experience, more connections, and more confidence than she did. Sarah felt out of place and doubted whether she could ever make it in the big city. After graduation, Sarah decided to take a risk. She packed her bags and moved to the city with just a few $100s in savings and a big dream. She started looking for jobs in fashion, but it wasn't easy. For months, she worked in small shops, helping customers, and learning the ins and outs of the industry. While she didn't land her dream job right away, she stayed persistent. She used every opportunity to network, asking people for advice, offering to help with projects, and attending fashion events. Slowly, Sarah's hard work started to pay off. One day, Sarah was given a chance to assist a designer on a big project. This led to another opportunity, and before long, she was working full-time as a junior designer. It wasn't glamorous at first, but Sarah was happy because she was doing what she loved. Over time, she gained more experience, and after several years, Sarah became the lead designer at a well-known fashion company. Today, Sarah runs her own successful fashion brand, and she often reflects on the early days of her journey. Her story teaches us that success doesn't happen overnight. It requires patience, determination, and the willingness to take risks and embrace challenges along the way. Next, let's talk about Tom, a man in his mid-30s who worked in a corporate job. Tom had always been good at his job, but he wasn't passionate about it. He spent most of his time sitting in meetings, making spreadsheets, and completing tasks that didn't excite him. Over the years, Tom started to feel like something was missing in his life. He had a steady paycheck and a secure job, but he felt like he was stuck in a routine. One day, he started thinking about what he really enjoyed doing, helping people and making a difference in their lives. Tom had always been interested in health and fitness, and he wondered if he could turn this passion into a career. But there was a problem. He didn't have any formal qualifications in fitness. He didn't know where to begin. However, Tom realized that the first step was to take action. He signed up for a fitness certification course, which required him to study, practice, and pass a series of exams. During this time, Tom still worked his corporate job, but he made sure to dedicate his evenings and weekends to his studies. After completing his certification, Tom began working as a personal trainer on the side. He started with just a few clients, but over time his reputation grew. People appreciated his approach, and he was able to build a loyal client base. Eventually, Tom made the decision to leave his corporate job and become a full-time personal trainer. While it was a big leap, he was excited about the change. Today, Tom runs a successful fitness business, helping people achieve their health goals and live better lives. Tom's story teaches us that it's never too late to follow your passions. Sometimes it takes a bit of courage to make a change, but with hard work and dedication, you can turn your dreams into reality. It's important to be willing to start small, even if you don't have everything you need right away. Success often comes from taking that first step, no matter how uncertain the future may seem. Let's now explore the journey of Rachel, a woman in her late 20s who always loved cooking. Growing up, Rachel's parents owned a small restaurant, and she spent most of her childhood helping in the kitchen. By the time she reached adulthood, she had developed a deep love for food and cooking. But Rachel didn't think she could make a career out of it. She had other interests and pursued a degree in business, thinking that this would provide a more stable career path. After graduating, Rachel landed a job in a corporate office, but she never felt truly happy. Her heart was always in the kitchen. One day, after a particularly stressful week at work, Rachel realized that she needed to make a change. She wasn't living the life she wanted, and she didn't want to look back one day and regret not pursuing her passion. Rachel decided to take the plunge. She enrolled in a culinary school and started taking evening classes after work. It was challenging balancing her job with her studies, but Rachel was determined. After completing her course, Rachel decided to start her own small catering business. She began by offering services for local events, providing homemade meals to clients. At first, it was just a side hustle, but soon her reputation grew, and more people began requesting her services. Rachel's business flourished, and a few years later, she opened her own restaurant. Today, Rachel's restaurant is one of the most popular spots in town, known for its fresh, creative dishes. Her story is a reminder that following your passion, even when it seems risky, can lead to amazing outcomes. Sometimes, that's all for today's episode of Artificial Fluency. I'm absolutely convinced that improving your cultural intelligence will take your English skills to extraordinary new heights. Remember, true fluency happens when you understand both the words and the invisible cultural context behind them. We'll explore the art of small talk, those seemingly simple conversations that can actually be the most challenging for language learners. Until then, this is Emma reminding you that language is the doorway to culture, and every new cultural insight brings you one step closer to true fluency. Keep being curious, and I'll see you next week for another mind-expanding episode.